We are those guys. We hope to be your guys. I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. You see the hat. This is the fifth and final installment of the Patriots Dynasty Rewatch recap that we have here available to you, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. This is episode 5, the final installment. So if you haven't been listening yet, stop right where you are, go back on our podcast or YouTube feed, and pull up the Birth of the Patriots Dynasty episodes 1 and 2 with those guys. And you can just reminisce about those New York Jets days for one Nick Ferguson and the start of Tom Brady's career. What's going on, Nick?
Nothing much, man. Still enjoying life. And as they say, all good things must come to an end. And so has the dynasty for Tom Brady and the Patriots, not just figuratively, but actually. Yeah, so it's always happened. Yeah.
We'll get to the conclusion of the documentary and kind of our own thoughts on where it ended and kind of what the future is for that football team. But we start episode 9, and it's not, once again, knowing this documentary well enough, it's not really about football, right? So it's 2016, and we have a fiery presidential election, and the Patriots sort of get adopted into this Donald Trump media circus, in large part because of the relationships that Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and Robert Kraft have with the former president, who at this moment in time is creating friction with the National Football League, telling teams to fire their players for their peaceful protests against the national anthem. We'll get to kind of sort of the sentiments of some of the players, but in large part, you hear guys say that this season, 2016, 2017, it was the hardest time to be a part of this Patriots dynasty. And Nick, maybe because of a personal letter that Belichick wrote, we start to see fractions forming within the dynasty itself.
Yeah, it does. And usually in the structure of an NFL building, there are certain things that you don't talk about. Race, religion, politics, all hotbed topics. Organizations don't want anything that's going to drive a wedge between player to player, man to man, coach to coach. But in this particular situation, it seemed as though Bill Belichick broke his own rules. And when the guy who sets the pace breaks his own rules, it starts to make everyone question the whole legitimacy of the rules, themselves. And to see the Patriots players kind of, they didn't really talk about it in great detail, but you can see the level of frustration on their faces. And typically we don't see things within the locker room play out like this right before our eyes. And what I'm talking about is you have a lot of African-American players in the locker room who some were on the side of cap, some who were not. But to know that, you had Donald Trump saying something in regards to that, and then now your head coach, there's kind of this bromance, if you will, where Trump saying something and praising, Bill Belichick for things he said about Tom Brady and Belichick for being this great coach, which he is. But you can't cross the streams, man. Even in Ghostbusters, they tell you can't cross the streams. But the streams were being crossed, and it was causing a lot of conflict, or should I say, adding to ongoing conflict that was in the Patriots organization.
That's totally fair. And you mentioned the players, Devin McCourty and Matthew Slater, the team first guys that emphasize talking and focusing on football and sort of building a wall around the facility that starts to crumble away. And really where the 17 season goes, we'll start to see that affect the product on the football field as well. Not necessarily having anything to do with a relationship with Donald Trump, but kind of how the organization runs itself with Belichick at the helm. Speaking of not talking about football, we have the birth of TB12. After being kicked out of the facility, Alex Guerrero is now available to Tom. I guess I'm foreshadowing here. We have this friction where Tom is focusing on our special buzzword for episode 9, pliability, and having not just Tom, but now some of his past catchers, including Rob Gronkowski, visiting Alex Guerrero outside of the facility. Another angle in which this starts to chip and crumble away, that this isn't necessarily the same New England Patriots infrastructure we have, not just with focusing on football, but now rehabbing injuries. So, Nick, I guess I don't want to necessarily ask your preference on avocado flavored ice cream, but I am curious to know kind of the influence that maybe someone outside of the organization would have for a medical staff that was dedicated to the football team. I don't know if you have personal experience with that or a former teammate of yours, but is this just a Bill Belichick problem, or would any NFL coach take issue with your quarterback seeking alternate, I guess, a treatment than what the team is prescribing?
I have personal experience with this. I've seen it. And usually with most NFL teams, they want to make sure they keep everything medically in house. They want to know when and whatever is going on. I mean, listen, the world for us works differently as players as it do for everyone else. Like if we get sick, there are no sick days, there's no vacation days. We come in, we have to report to the medical staff, tell them what's wrong with us, and say we took Benadryl or let's just say Robitussin. We have to write that down. So if you get popped for some kind of drugs or they think you have a PED, they can always go back to that. So that's why teams try to make sure they have a tight-knit grip on what's going on with players. But as technology and things in medical field changes, so does the viewpoint of players. The same things that they used to do to treat injuries, players are now seeking out other alternatives. I mean, the medical field continues to grow and adapt. Shouldn't the NFL decide to do that too as well? In the case with the Patriots, they did not. And the relationship that Tom built with Guerrero, it seemed to benefit Tom. All you have to do, if you really want to break it down, look at Tom Brady's face over the 20 years he was with the Patriots. You will see morphs and changes in his face, and that tells you what was going on with him physically and in his diet, and it definitely helped him. And I can tell you this, man, players are creatures of habit. If Alex Hardy goes out and plays a great game, they want to know, what did Alex do to kind of play in the great game that he did, and how did he get back on the field as quickly as he did? And then if you say, hey, I got a guy, guess what they're going to say? Well, I want your same guy too.
Yep.
Because think about it. Tom was married to Giselle. How many guys would want to be married to a supermodel? And
I can think of a few, yeah.
Exactly. And he's a quarterback making a substantial amount of money, even though he was still highly underpaid for the Patriots organization. You want to duplicate that same thing. And we saw, Gronk talking about how he thought he might get cut because his head coach was saying, well, he looked a little sluggish. He looked a little slow. Right. And Gronk had some injuries. So he said, well, maybe jump on this TB12. Let me start using these bands and see how it helps. And it helped him. So I'm all for every player doing that. But most organizations don't want you to do that, because now if you have a larger number of guys going to outside treatment, now they lose the one thing that they always want and was really the catalyst to the destruction of the dynasty. It's called control.
Exactly.
They want control, and your guy, Bill Belichick, wanted all of it.
Well, it's funny that, this friction with Guerrero and sort of the foundation of TB12, he goes to play 6 more years after this, right? Well into his 40s. And Tom, and Rob Gronkowski were giving credit to Guerrero and his work. And Tom was just baffled, and Rob too. We actually saw a lot of Rob Gronkowski kind of for the first time in this documentary to defend the TB12 method, stating that, Bill's just hammering Brady, and he's not giving him credit for extending his career, going well beyond what was expected of quarterbacks in the National Football League up to this point. And still, there aren't 45-year-olds not named Tom Brady in the National Football League. And throughout this period, you see more of a divide between Brady and Belichick. And it comes to a point as well when Kraft is in full support of Brady, and they then have the team decide to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, trading him to the 49ers for a second-round pick. And I think that's a really fascinating ripple effect, too, because they, in San Francisco, where you currently are at this point in the dynasty, Nick, you end up working with Jimmy Garoppolo and this team, where their plan wasn't necessarily to get a young, promising quarterback that had a few starts under his belt, just sort of landed in their team's lap. And at the time, as a fan, I'm thinking, well, I guess they're just riding it out with Tom. If it's some kind of internal struggle, if Jimmy Garoppolo is the proxy that represents Bill Belichick, well, then Brady won this power struggle. Rob Gronkowski said it was like watching two parents fighting each other, and you'd spend the year walking around like clenching your butt cheeks, hoping that nothing bad was going to happen. And I'll kick things over to you, but the documentary focuses in on this to the point where I sort of lose track of the fact that we pan over and, oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden we realize that it is it is now time to go to the Super Bowl, because despite all this friction and the tension between the two parties, oh, hey, by the way, we won 13 games. We're going to the Super Bowl again. And once again, I'm sort of just the guy that's the homer who's thinking the documentary's glossed over this because, well, let's really hone in on how upset they were at each other. Well, Tom has another career year. They win 13 games. I kind of see a little bit of a disconnect there, Nick.
Well, here's what happened, man. Let's go back to the total control. Think about the tree from which spawned or grew a Bill Belichick. The same tree that you had Bill O'Brien, Josh McDaniels, right? Nick Saban. It's the Bill Parcells tree. And I know that tree all too well. So it was a sense of control. And not to say that Bill Belichick said that he wanted all the credit. The credit was bestowed upon him, which every year the Patriots were right there, whether they were in the Super Bowl or not, they were always there. And it was like, what a great job Bill Belichick did. But all of a sudden, the narrative started to switch. And people started talking about Tom and what Tom did. And Tom was like, wait a minute. Yeah, I was a part of that. When I first got here, it was defensively led. But I am truly a part of what has happened here in New England, and all those wins that are attached to Bill Belichick. I was a part of that too. And Tom remembers telling Robert Kraft, I am the best decision that you ever made. And Kraft said, from your mouth to God's ears. Well, I guess God must have heard him, because you look at Tom Brady's run, and then Tom decided, you know what? I want to take some time with my family. I've earned this. I've deserved this. But Bill Belichick was relentless. He didn't let up. He continued to lay into Tom, because here's what his mindset was. His mindset was, if I go after Tom, who's a bona fide Hall of Famer, right? Then that's going to put everyone else in line. And if you look at why the Patriots way or the disciples of Bill Belichick never worked anywhere else, that's the reason why, right? Look where they're getting all this filtered down information from all the people that was above them. They came from the Parcells tree, but they were not freaking Parcells. And you can't just kind of degrade a guy in front of his teammates. I'm talking about grown-ass man. You talking trash about a grown man, and you think that he's not going to clap back? So Tom realized, you know what? I'm just as much a part of this dynasty as you are. That's why I love the part when both Giselle and Tom go to Robert Kraft's house, right? And Tom didn't really want to talk about it, but he had to tell Robert Kraft, hey, man, I'm tired of this crap. You need to do something about it.
Well, that comes right after Super Bowl 52, and Bill Belichick may have overplayed his hand a little bit. You talk about that team control, because to this day, not even Malcolm Butler can tell you why he didn't play one snap in Super Bowl 52. And every single other player on the team has their suspicions and points to Bill Belichick. And we've got a game going. Tom Brady is having an incredible performance. Josh McDaniels sits down in the documentary. I haven't seen him for a while, but he's back, obviously, from his stint as the Broncos head coach. Shout out to you, Nick Ferguson. And this is where we get that divide, and Tom gets the credit. And we had that meeting with Robert Kraft. 41 points, 538 yards of offense, and 374 passing yards for Tom Brady, right? They finished this game. He's the first ever 500-yard passer in Super Bowl history. They scored 33 points, but I gave you those Eagles stats where Bill Belichick's defense allowed 41 points, 538 yards of offense, and Nick Foles, 374 passing yards and a loss. I mean, 2017 was one of the toughest seasons we mentioned from the jump because of Donald Trump and Colin Kaepernick pressure. And now you have this Brady versus Belichick. And now you see that Bill Belichick's defense completely dropped the ball. And, leave it to Tom Brady himself, because not only do we get TB12, but we get Facebook Watch exclusive Tom versus Time, where he breaks down this Super Bowl loss and he asks, what are we all doing this for? Just another year where Tom has an incredible season, an offensive-led team. The defense allowed a ton of yards but didn't give up a lot of points. But the bottom fell out against the Philadelphia Eagles in that Super Bowl, a team that had not won a modern Super Bowl. And it's just sort of, the Patriots allowing other teams to come out and beat them like that. So it does really transition us to the final episode of the documentary. And Nick, if you want to pick up on where, Tom Brady and Robert Kraft have this discussion talking about his future.
Yeah, I mean, once again, all good things come to an end. It's a cliche saying, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout this documentary, leading up to this point, that's where all roads are leading, a separation. And just like Robert Kraft had a relationship with Drew Bledsoe before, that relationship has now become more solid with a guy like Tom, because of the level of success that he's brought to the New England area, Robert Kraft and the Patriots organization. But they started to feel as though there was a tug of war, who was going to win the tug of war battle. And a part of that started with, drafting Jimmy Garoppolo, right? All of this is part of the so-called, giving you air quotes again, the Patriots way, because the idea is to move on from players far earlier than maybe their careers were dictated. But they had gone so long with Tom, Bill started to realize he needed to go in a different direction. He wanted a new spice of life because he was losing control, because Kraft had the affinity for Tom. So enters Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom gets injured and Garoppolo starts to play. But this is where that balance, we saw the scales tipping when Robert Kraft in a way was like, yo, hey man, Tom is my guy. You got to take this other chiseled chin, good looking guy with good hair and send him somewhere else, right? We got to get him out of here. And that's kind of what happened. And I'm sure Bill Belichick sat in his office with his cutoff sweatshirt, with his feet on his desk, saying, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. This is not how this is going to end. I'm watching my power slowly be taken away from me day by day by this guy who thinks he's the face of the organization when I'm the face of the organization. And the question was raised by a lot of individuals who covered the Patriots, right? And it was like, well, is it Tom or is it Bill? Even Scott Pioli said, well, it is preposterous to even bring that up in conversation.
Right.
But to know that Tom eventually leaves, wins another Super Bowl in Tampa, and I think at that time, what was he? Was he 46, 47? Hell, he could have been 55.
40. He was 43.
He was 43?
43 in 2020. And he played until he was 45 before retiring in 2022. And we're talking about a 41-year-old entering the 2018 season. And Tom talks to Kraft, and Kraft's takeaway in the documentary, that effing Belichick, he doesn't treat my Tommy like a man. And
my Tommy.
I know, right? See, it's right.
Tommy boy.
Pudding. Chris Farley over here, Tom Callahan Jr. out here spending the mini camp portion with his family, just looking for a break from that same cycle he's had for 20 years, kind of foreshadowing, he's taking a few months away from the Patriots. as we know, he'll take a permanent break from the New England Patriots as well. And shout out Nancy Brady, because we get interviews from every single member of the Brady family. And his older sister was kind of the last one in the family to believe he would actually go, because his kids were born in New England. He loves the fans. He loves the Krafts. He loves the organization. But the friction that Bill was causing really, kicked that door open a little more than if a 41-year-old, kind of having that midlife crisis, the door may be ajar anyway. To sort of soften the blow, hey, Alex Guerrero, come on back. Just make things easier for my quarterback, because we are continuing to be a competitive team. And because this is the Dynasty documentary, we get very telling quotes from Matthew Slater, who is adamant, saying that if Bill and Tom want to talk to each other, if Tom has something to say to Bill, don't come to me as the other captain and relay it. You go tell Bill himself, which Matthew Slater's a grown man too, like we totally understand this. And the other piece is we have all this friction, but oh, wait, Nick, guess what happens? They win 11 games and we go straight to the AFC Championship game. And I just, of course, Alex Guerrero coming back merits more time than the 13 wins that it takes to get to the AFC Championship. But you've got to be kidding me. Can we please just talk a little bit of football? I swear, would it kill them?
Well, you want to talk, football, but you can't really talk football without talking the nuances that went into what the dynasty actually is. Because the situation with Rob Gronkowski, right? You look at everything that's being said about Tom and his dysfunctional relationship with Bill Belichick, right? There's so many things that are ongoing, but this is part of the story to just kind of give everyone an insight on how toxic, things actually became. And then, having Alex Guerrero come back, that had to be the biggest slap in the face for Bill Belichick. And that's where he knew himself, I'm losing control, right? The control that I had, I am now losing. But when you are thrust in the midst of chaos and you are still able to win 10, 11 plus games, that's a positive. That shows, despite the dysfunction, guys were still committed. And it reminds me of what I think it was Danny Amendola said. Once again, we worked for, and this is me paraphrasing, I'm probably going to screw it up exactly how he said it, but they worked for Bill, but they play for Tom. This, in that statement itself, it said that inside that locker room, there was more belief in Tom than it was for Bill, because as guys who play on the field, we have coaches. I had Mike Shanahan, but as being able to look in the face of a Champ Bailey or John Lynch or Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, and a Jake Plummer, to know that we were good, right? We were good. And once again, no one was really checking for Bill in that way. He was losing his touch, right? So he had to find a way to regain control.
That makes a ton of sense, and you can express that in a number of ways, right? And I guess my complaint, among all else, is we have this Week 6 meeting with the Kansas City Chiefs, the first time Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes face off against each other.
Baby go.
Right? You have this beautiful narrative of old versus new, and Mahomes lighting the league like a fire, and yet they score 40 points, and it's still not enough to beat the Patriots, and it foreshadows that AFC Championship game that's to come, where they score another 31 points. There's a way to continue to build Tom and to credit the team for a well-balanced offense and the defense that forced a couple turnovers of Patrick Mahomes to build the momentum of this season, despite everything that's going on behind the scenes. And of course, we want to know what goes on behind the scenes. If they just give us highlights, we could have just as easily gone to YouTube. And if you're not typing in those guys to watch us on YouTube, you can watch those plays themselves. But to have the perspective, like Tom Brady not being able to talk about Patrick Mahomes, that's a loss for us as fans. That's a loss for NFL fans, for Patriots fans, for Chiefs fans. and being able to see where the Chiefs are now as the first team since the 03-04 Patriots that we talked about in episode 2 of Dynasty to be the first to go back to back. Like this is what matters to me as, a self-proclaimed intelligent football fan, but instead we're getting these played out quotes and constantly going back to the well of Danny Amendola saying Tom Brady was slighted. Let the play speak for itself. And when we get to Super Bowl 52 and the Bill getting the credit for the loss, Super Bowl 53 against Sean McVay, the star pupil of the Kyle Shanahan tree, we now get Bill Belichick getting the credit in a 13-3 victory once again. It's exactly 17 years to the day when in 2001 we have Patriots Rams. The Rams had the best offense in the NFL, and he is now the youngest coach in the NFL in line to win a Super Bowl, who has to get through Bill Belichick, the oldest coach to win a Super Bowl. And we get a changing tide from Robert Kraft based on how this game plays out in the Super Bowl. Nick?
Yeah, it is a very interesting type of game. Like, I really enjoyed that game when I watched it because being a defensive guy, I love to see defensive, strength being shown in a given game. But that was not the game where we saw Tom Brady and the Patriots offense looking as though we've seen them in years past. And this was a time where once again, the balancing and tipping of the scales tipped back in the favor of one Bill Belichick. And I have to give it to him, and they had a great game plan. The guys executed well because there were opportunities that the Rams, that is, they didn't really capitalize off of. And Stephon Gilmore made some key plays.
Oh, my God, yeah.
To help the Patriots win that particular Super Bowl. But once again, it all just adds to the drama of the Patriots and what came first, the chicken or the egg. But ultimately, no matter what the drama was leading up to that point, you just won another Super Bowl. And as usual, in typical fashion, Tom gets to say, hey, I'm going to Disney World. And at that point, I don't know if I don't think you really care. I don't think Patriots fans really care what led up to that or how ugly it looked offensively. The only thing that mattered was they won another title.
That's right. That is the sacrifice a player like yourself and thousands of others have made to appease a fan base that has built expectations going back 20 years and sort of overlooking certain cracks in the foundation and issues and tension and friction between coach and quarterback, and so now we have them on full display with some perspective from Tom, no perspective from Bill, but people that were close enough to the story able to comment on it. And those that were closest teammates of Brady's weren't really able to comment on his decision to leave after the 2019 season. They go to the playoffs, they lose to the Titans in their opening playoff game. His final throw as a New England Patriot was a pick six, and guys are finding out in the locker room on social media that Tom wasn't coming back. But I mean, come on, it was a foregone conclusion. We just watched the last 4 episodes of Dynasty, and everybody knew that these guys were going to break up. That's not really how it was. And we get, again, independent of football, this 2020 season is completely marred by a global pandemic and teams kind of scrambling to figure out what to do. You would expect that Tom Brady in Tampa Bay understands in his age, 43 season, what he wants to do on offense, what this team is capable of, and they get a fast start. You would expect the same out of Bill Belichick, who's had a system built into his organization for 20 years, and they cycle through quarterbacks, and we get a low lights reel of Bill Belichick coached teams that just aren't getting the job done. We see Danny Amendola asking Bill, like, hey, I thought, the quarterback at Foxborough High could get this team to compete. And we didn't see it with Cam Newton or Broncos legend Jarrett Stidham We didn't see it with rookie Mac Jones all that well either. I just want to say, during that low light reel, shout out, we get the Jacoby Myers lateral to Chandler Jones. That was immediately after a Ramondre Stevenson catch that gave me a fantasy football playoff victory. So that play has always been a conflicting one for me because it was a complete and total embarrassment for my beloved franchise. But I did get to the next round of the fantasy playoffs, which just makes me an insufferable fan. I just said I was intelligent. I can also be insufferable. It was insufferable to watch the low light reel. And then we hear Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones. Now, this song is exactly 4 minutes and 31 seconds in length. And that was the best 4 minutes and 31 seconds as a Patriots fan. Willie McGinnis takes us through and shows us play after play with, Malcolm Butler, Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, Teddy Bruschi, Rodney Harrison, Rob Gronkowski. Oh, finally, an offensive player in the highlight reel.
Hey.
Randy Moss, Drew Bledsoe. We get the high points of this team and what the dynasty was really about, winning football games. So we do get that reprise at the end, the team's success, and then we get a black placard at the end, the final shot of the documentary, and in text it says, on January 11th, Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick parted ways after a historic 24 seasons. Nick, anything on the lowlights of the team from 2020 to 2023, or anything on the highlights of what we just watched in Dynasty?
Well, obviously the lowlights is, the family breaking up. And like Gronk said, watching two parents kind of have an argument, it's really bad for the kid. It paints bad visuals. And this is why I'm not a firm believer in staying together for the kids, because it sounds great, but it only makes things more baffling and confusing for everyone involved. And just going through that laundry list of quarterback after quarterback, I mean, if you are a Patriots fan, I mean, you suffered. But once again, you lived almost 20 years of celebrating while other organizations were standing on the opposite side of the fence watching you guys drop confetti. So what it tells me is, hey, look, no matter what sport or what team you root for, enjoy that team, that player, that coach, and their level of success, because one day it would all be over. Like you mentioned the game between Mahomes and Brady. It was supposed to be the game coined as the passing of the torch, but it didn't work that way for Kansas City in that moment. So now Kansas City is riding high, trying to emulate that of the New England Patriots. But how long would their dynasty actually last? Back-to-back Super Bowls. They've appeared in 4. They've won 3. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that, yes, did the Patriots kind of reset what the idea of what we thought the dynasty was? Because as a kid growing up, it was the 49ers. It was the Dallas Cowboys. It was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then all of a sudden, it was the New England Patriots. I remember when Steve Grogan, quarterback with the neck roll. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But most fans only remember what they saw of victories. So you can say, well, once again, Patriots kind of hit the reset button on that. Kansas City is now trying to duplicate that. But the moral of the story, man, enjoy these guys while you're able and you're blessed to watch them, because at some point, the relationships do come to an end, and they end worse than the joy when they first started.
It's kind of funny moving forward and kind of looking at where the Patriots go now to pick up the pieces, right? We saw what it was like without Tom Brady. We're about to see what it's like without Bill Belichick. And there were key Patriots that were part of these Super Bowl teams that weren't a part of the documentary. And I'm thinking of Gerard Mayo, Troy Brown, other guys specifically because they have roles within the organization. Gerard Mayo promoted to head coach. And it's interesting the approach that Robert Kraft has taken. We've talked about his approach with this documentary and his relationship with Imagine Productions that kind of paints a much finer brush with him than I'd say with Belichick, but with the organization as well. You're turning over a new leaf, and you don't do a formal head coaching search. You don't do a formal GM search either. You promote from within, and guys that had worked under Bill Belichick, either as a player or within the front office. You have Gerard Mayo running as head coach, and you have Elliot Wolf, the general manager. It's interesting to see them divest themselves from Belichick, but not necessarily those that worked underneath him, Nick. And I just want to wrap Dynasty and our recap on sort of where the Patriots are with the current pieces in place, ones that are familiar with the Belichick way at a crucial point for them because of, look, I am kind of glad with some of the pieces they re-signed, but how many pieces of a 4-win team are worth coming back the following season? And with the third overall selection in the 2024 draft, we're at an inflection point where we kind of still see the Belichick footprint with where this team is set to be stepping ahead.
Yeah, same footprint, or shall I say, it is a footprint, but the actual toes and the size of the shoe looks a little different. And that's what Robert Kraft is banking on. Yeah, we're keeping some of our core people together because once again, a successful action should always be followed. You don't try to come in and do something entirely different. We've seen so many organizations fail, but when you have 20 plus years of operating in a particular way, and we've seen coaches, we've seen players, we've seen front office personnel move on to other teams, but to know that Gerard Mayo, without a coaching search, Robert Kraft knew what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted that same family toughness, that grit that Bill Belichick presented, but he wanted it with more softer edges. All you had to do is look at Gerard Mayo's, press conference. It sounded entirely different, right? From the tone of his voice, the words that he spoke, it's a different regime with the Patriots organization, but still wrapped in the same package. But now we all get a chance to see what it looks like moving forward. I'll tell you this. Right now, I think the Patriots sitting at third in the upcoming draft. Who's to say that they may not want to take another Michigan quarterback, hoping to duplicate what they had with Tom? Not saying that they will, not saying that they won't, but it would be interesting to see if they went in that direction and how much influence one Tom Brady would have over that particular decision. But yes, it's a new crew in New England. The faces look the same, but the mindset and the motto is set to be a little different.
He's Nick Ferguson. I'm Alex Hardy. We may be saying goodbye to the Patriots Dynasty, but you do not have to say goodbye to us, because for more thoughts on not just the New England Patriots, but plenty of other teams this offseason as we head towards the NFL draft and when teams start to become fully whole, you can keep it right here, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your content. We're excited to talk about some of our favorite draft prospects. Nick Ferguson is a Jaden Daniels guy. As of yesterday, I am a Drake May guy. So I'm excited to see how we sort of duke it out in terms of who the better fit may be, not just for my Patriots, but in the National Football League. It's not all quarterbacks either. Nick is grinding tape. You can always find him at Nick Ferguson _25. And any questions about the Denver Broncos or any team around the National Football League? Nick, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you on our other podcast, but do you have any parting words for the Patriots Dynasty as we head on out?
Yeah, the only parting words, man, is, hey, you guys had a great run. This is the process of football. There's always ebbs and flows like we have in life, and never blink, because if you blink too long, you just might miss the next great player.
And if you blink too long, your eyes are closed. See you, Nick.
See ya.